Okay, why don't we start? Okay, so if you can kindly mute your microphones, that would be much appreciated. Okay, aloha. Good evening. My name is Senator Bennett Misalucha. I'm the incumbent senator here at District 16, which covers Aiea, Pearl City, and Halava. So tonight, thank you and welcome to our NECA residents. We want to acknowledge the presence of Representative Sam Kong, who is in the audience. We'll hear from him later on. I do want to also acknowledge and congratulate the new president of NECA, Howard Ishizuka. Thank you, Howard, and congratulations, and we wish you well. I know you're going to do a fantastic job because you have the passion for this job. In working with you closely, I've found you to be very responsive. I've found you to be very diligent and committed to serving the community. Okay, so
what happened to my thing?
So I'm going to, again, let's mute people because I know we want to be able to frame this discussion. I want to make sure that we understand what this meeting is about. So this is about the encampments within the NECA territory. First of all, I want to acknowledge that this issue, the homelessness issue, is an issue that is very pervasive. It has been increasingly been problematic in our area. And as you know, there are several encampments, not just in the NECA territory, NECA neck of the woods, but really there's also other places like the bike path as well as the Waimalu stream where we have this type of issues. However, for the purpose of this discussion, we're really going to confine in the 1 hour that we have, confine our discussion with the homeless issues within the confinement of the NECA environment. We have 3 speakers in addition to Howard and Representative Kong, who will be providing us a status report. Again, just to provide a framework, our Senate office received the outreach from, I think, Howard on April 19. That was the first time. So this is a work in progress. There have been several meetings, many meetings throughout the last so many months. And it also culminated in a walkthrough, which we conducted about a couple of months ago. But in our last huddle in July, there was a desire from the committee, from the small task force, to make sure that we continue to communicate with the residents. And I think, to provide an update, to provide where we're at, again, this is a work in progress. We're not saying the issue is resolved, but I think we owe it to you to tell you, to give you a progress report. So with that said, I'm going to now turn over the floor to Howard, after which if Representative Sam Kong would like to say a few words, after which we're going to then go into our presentation. We're going to try to be respectful of everyone's time. So again, sorry about that. So let's try to keep within the 1 hour. After the 3 speakers, and the 3 speakers are Scott Morishige, who is the governor's coordinator on homelessness. Then we're having Officer Kelly Makanani, who is the community policing coordinator for HBD. And then the third one is, I think we have Ryan Shibuya from the Newtown golf range or driving range. And then after which there will be some, opportunity for questions and answers. Okay, so having said that, now, Howard, would you like to take the floor? Please go ahead. Howard, you're muted.
There you go, after the round 48. So now again, thank you for those kind words, Senator. Hope I can live up to everything you said. And then, so first of all, I just wanted to thank all the government and private and community representatives who, this was like a team effort, and especially to Senator Misalucha, who, pieced all this big puzzle together. And I think we made some headway, which the other folks will report on their part. So just briefly, how we got to this point is that, we reached out to Senator Misalucha's office and also to Councilman Elefante's office for help. And then, so when we started this, first we had to identify where the encampments were. So we had a site visits and, the staff from Newtown find the encampments and then take GPS coordinates of them. And then we superimpose the coordinates onto the city and county's parcels of land. So what it finally boiled down to was there were, some encampments on Newtown property and some encampments on the city and county parcel of land, which is basically the land that the comfort station and the parking lot sits on, that are on the left side is on the driveway to the rec center. And then also the driving range. So so then each owner of the respective parcels work on a plan to remove the homeless items. But before that, the outreach folks from, I believe, the state as well as city and county, and Scott can maybe speak to that, went out first to see if they could offer help to the homeless folks. And some took up the offer, some said they would, and then they rejected, and there's some just flat out said they don't want any help. But we started that, and after that, the respective city and county, driving range, and Newtown went in and cleared the homeless items. So just to finish up, as far as the homeless on encampments on Newtown property, the staff, maintenance staff, and from the Newtown went in and cleared the items and continue to monitor the sites for any return. So, and those sites are the property on the at the corner of Kahele and Kilinoy Street on the Diamond Head side of Kahele, Komomai Drive, parcel of land off of Komomai Drive, and then basically the Newtown property where there was encampment just a few yards from the Alphabet Land School. So those are the three Newtown properties that were cleared and are being monitored. So, so in closing, we still have, there's still other work to do. Well, I won't get into that at this point. And then if there's time later, we can discuss the items that still need attending to. So thank you for the time, Senator.
All right, thank you, Howard. Representative Kong, would you like to say a few words?
Oh, just aloha, everyone. Just thank you for being here. I'm actually anxious to hear what Officer Makanani has to say at this point, and maybe some of the other members of Newtown. I seen, because the reason I say that is because I just seen Calvin Tuesday, I think it was. I was going to yell out to him, but I was across the street and everything. So, but in any case, I'll wait for the report. But thank you all for being here. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rep Kong. Okay, so at this juncture, I'm going to now turn over the floor to Scott Murashige, the governor's coordinator on homelessness. Go ahead, Scott. And I am going to, hang on. Share the screen, and here we go.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. So, first of all, I just wanted to, introduce myself. And again, I'm the governor's coordinator on homelessness. I've been in this position with the state for about 7 years now. And my role really is to coordinate policy primarily within state government and to align efforts between the state, other government agencies, and the private sector. So Senator Misalucha had asked me to put together a short, kind of PowerPoint slide deck. So I can go over that in a minute. But what I wanted to do, first of all, though, is just acknowledge, I think, our legislative leaders. So Senator Misalucha, Representative Kong, and Councilmember Elefante, I think really have worked hard to advocate for our community. And, you know, I'm a resident of Newtown also, so I really appreciate their efforts in a variety of different ways. And my office connects with both Senator Misalucha's office and Representative Kong's office pretty regularly about various types of concerns. So I wanted also to start off by saying, you know, everything that you'll hear about is really something that's required a lot of coordination. There's no one entity or, you know, organization that can take on issues like this alone. It takes everybody sort of working together.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott. I think the person
Yeah.
muted. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Okay, okay, hang on,
Senator-
hang on. Yes.
Yeah.
One moment, because I'm having some technical issues. Because every time I try to do it where it's from the beginning and just by itself, but it keeps going into the where there's a view of the other slide. So, but you know what? Be that as it may, I'm just going to go ahead and just share whatever we have here. Okay, so there you go. Let's just share it. You see how the view is different. Okay, go ahead.
So I just want to start off, this first picture is just showing the multiple jurisdictions that Howard had talked about. And it's a combination of private property and government property. So the city property is the area that he mentioned with the comfort station and parking lot, as well as the park that's on the other side of the driveway. And then the other areas include Newtown property right outside the rec center, and then the Newtown driving range property. So I just wanted to kind of start off with that so you can see the complexity of different jurisdictions. And the challenge for government is that we are able to respond and clear items that are government property, but we're not able to do that for private landowners. So each property owner needs to be responsible for what happens on their own land. You can move forward to the next slide. And then this is just an aerial view. So Howard had mentioned, you know, the staff, him and Ellie, and I think some others went out and had gotten GPS coordinates, dropped pins, and then we superimposed it on, you know, a Google map, 3D Google map. And I think it gives you a sense just of the terrain. Some of these encampments, and these are all ones on the Newtown driving range property, were not necessarily easy to access because they were all on the hillside. And the pins indicate generally where the encampments were. They were sort of off of a trail in the brush. And so for the driving range, they were very difficult to remove because they weren't easily accessible from the ground level. So getting vehicular access or even staff access up to those points was challenging, especially when you're talking about removing a number of items. Can move forward to the next slide. And I thought it would just really be helpful for everyone listening to kind of go over the action steps that were taken. So as both Senator and Howard had shared, it started with some initial inquiries that were forwarded to legislators. And, you know, my office had been working on these issues together with Officer Makanani and others prior to that. But following legislative action, they did arrange a form of site visit to the areas, the 3 areas on the map below, as well as the city and NECA encampment areas on June 3rd. And then following that visit, when we were able to get a better sense of which sites were active and where they were located, outreach workers from both the state and the city and counties Teamwork Hawaii program went out to the area. They were able to connect with individuals. They provided an offer of services to everyone. As Howard mentioned, not everybody took them up on that offer, and that's not uncommon. Most of the time when service providers go out, there's a lot of distrust of government or distrust of people that the homeless individuals may not know or be familiar with. So sometimes it takes time to build a relationship. Currently, of the people that we were encountered, there's 2 that are continuing to move forward with services. But I wanted to share that it's not a straight linear path where if someone says, okay, that they're always going to be consistent with the outreach worker or case manager. With both the individuals that were engaged in services, it's sort of been a rocky road. where they've kind of gone off and on. One of the individuals, I think Rep. Kong had mentioned, Kelvin, had initially said he did not want services at all, then changed his mind, engaged in services, changed his mind again, said he did not want services. And then I think has since kind of reconnected, and the provider's been able to do a housing assessment, working on the next step, but it's not an easy process. It does take time. So I wanted to highlight that. Then following the connection of the outreach workers, the city conducted what they call a SPO, or Stored Property Ordinance Enforcement, on their property on June 14th. And then they continue to monitor the area. Officer Makanani and HPD do spot checks. And I think he can probably talk to what the city's efforts are when they go out and do that kind of enforcement. And then I talked to Ryan Shibuya from the Newtown Driving Range a few weeks ago, again earlier today, and he mentioned to me that they had addressed all of the encampments on their private property. I believe Ellie did a walkthrough or checked in with Ryan earlier to kind of confirm, and the encampment still appeared to be clear from the Newtown Driving Range property. And Ryan was also flexible to allow time for the outreach workers to work with some of the individuals, because there is one particular individual that was very close to getting into housing, and he was open enough to give some time so that the providers could go in and engage with that person. If we can move forward to the next slide. So a lot of what I've been talking about, I mentioned the city a lot, I mentioned private property, and you can see there's not really any state land in this area. So you may be asking yourself, what is the state's role? Well, my role, a lot of times people like to call my position the homeless czar, but really the title I have, coordinator, is more appropriate. A lot of my job is coordinating. So working with multiple entities involved, such as in this case, providing follow-up and support, particularly to outreach, to make sure that there's no duplication of services, because there are sometimes multiple providers serving an area, and making sure that homeless individuals get connected to the right type of service. So for example, in some of the areas around the encampments we're talking about, there are some individuals who have behavioral health issues. I think one of them is a young woman. Many of you may have seen her. She's sometimes in a state of undress. And we were able to get that individual connected to mental health case management services. And that can provide follow-up that's a little bit more intensive than what a regular outreach provider can provide. So part of my role is making sure when we get calls from Officer Makanani or others, that we're connecting the people to the right type of service, and we're working with the providers to coordinate the different types of missing pieces. Another thing that my office does is we triage complaints. Sometimes people are calling in to complain about a homeless encampment or request services for someone, but they don't know, are they calling in about a city property, state property, private property? My office helps to figure those things out for people, and we contact the appropriate agencies and we bring them in. The state also does have some properties that we're responsible for that are nearby. So particularly the area under the freeway overpass sort of by Dave's Ice Cream, we help to clear that area, and things in the right of way of the H1 as it crosses over behind some of the warehouses. So we have a contractor crew from Department of Transportation that goes out to this area once a week. The day varies, but they go out on a weekly schedule. We also have a homeless coordinator within the Department of Transportation. His name is Jun Yang, and I work with him very closely. And then finally, part of my job, I think the main part, is really public policy, working on advocacy to scale housing and supportive services. Because part of the challenge is that although this issue is one of the biggest ones facing our state, we have way more demand and need for services than we have available resources. So part of my job is to work with the legislature, work with other state agencies, and try to continue to push and advocate to expand the types of services that we have. So if we can move to the next slide. Oh,
One moment. For some reason,
yeah,
it doesn't seem to be forwarding. Hang on.
I apologize.
Yeah, for some reason. Oh, there.
Technical issues. Oh,
Okay.
oh,
Wait, hang on.
one back.
One back. Okay. Hang on. Backspace. There, that.
Okay.
Okay.
So one example of the types of services advocate for is the Ohana Zones program. So I really want to thank our legislators for this, creating this program. And this was established back in 2018. The initial appropriation was $30 million. And more recently, just this past legislative session, the legislature chose to extend the program and provided an additional $15 million in funding. What the Ohana Zones Fund is, it's a flexible pot of funding that the state can use to accelerate projects that get people out of a situation of homelessness. And part of my job was figuring out how do we use this funding in the best way. And like I said earlier, the state cannot do things alone. We really need to partner with others who can bring different types of resources to the table. So particularly on Oahu, what we did is we partnered with the city and county of Honolulu, and we actually contract the funds to the county. And we look to pair state resources in terms of funding on top of either county facilities or county property. So we're really each bringing a piece to the table to produce additional housing and programs to help really enhance some of our efforts. So to the right of the bullets, you can see at the bottom, there's a building that says Kumubai on Yonge Street. It's a city-owned building where the state of Hawaii layers our funding for services over that property. And we've been able to create housing for seniors coming out of homelessness. There's a total of 20 units. They're provided case management, support, and rental subsidy. And this program has actually helped people transition out of encampments. Some individuals who have been homeless 20 years or more. I've seen a number of those people who this particular building has really changed their lives. And then above that, the tiny homes you see are our newest Ohana Zone project, Kamaoku Kahale, which our Lieutenant Governor, Josh Green, helped to initiate. And this is actually on state land, Hawaii Public Housing Authority land out in Kalailoa. The units are 10 by 10. They use a communal model, so they share a dining area and share shower and restroom space, sort of like a dorm facility, and you have these individual standalone units. And our funding from Ohana Zones provides supportive services and rent subsidy, and that money is funneled through the city. So it's still a state-city partnership. And then on the right-hand side, where you have the women at the table providing intake, that's our HONU program, the Homeless Outreach Navigation for Unsheltered program, which is a mobile tent shelter that's actually run by the Honolulu Police Department and Department of Community Services. And it provides short-term shelter for individuals who are not able to access a regular emergency shelter right away. The HONU is available 24/7. It's very low barrier. So if an officer, let's say Officer Makanani, encounters a homeless individual and they need a place to go, but they cannot get into a regular shelter because most shelters are full. If the HONU has space, he can call them. They have a driver that can come out to pick up the individual and take them to shelter. And that's really important because, people experiencing homelessness are going through a lot of trauma and they live day by day, moment by moment. So when they say that they really need to go to shelter right away, we want to make sure we provide that available to them. And I saw a note in the chat that Officer Makanani has to leave at 7:30. So, Senator, I'm wondering if I can just allow him to provide some quick updates before
Yes.
he leaves.
Why don't we do that? Officer Makanani, are you able to share at least the HPD perspective?
Yeah, so sorry. I have another engagement at 7:30 that I need to attend. As far as HPD standpoint, we are just here to assist you guys. If you guys need any type of help, any of assistance, anything at all, you guys can always call on us. And we're there to help assist you folks. So just recently we went with Ryan from Newtown Driving Range and we kind of cleared out the encampments that were on the private property of the driving range. I think that all of us are doing a really good job to keep the area free of people homeless actually squatting on the property, but it's a community effort to try and get these people to understand that they don't belong there. Things like clearing brush, maintenance checks, having service providers come up, things that, making them aware that we know they're there and that we're going to come up and address it, so we don't want them to think that nobody cares about the property. So that's where we come in. So if you guys need any assistance, please reach out to your council member, your senator, or your state rep, and they always know how to get a hold of me. And I just want to thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I hope, you know, everything goes well. And I think we're looking pretty good up in there in the new town. You guys are a great community. You guys have a lot of community members buying in. Look at the meeting, we have 68 participants. So that's a very good place to be in NECA. So thank you guys for having me. If you guys have any questions, please get a hold of your state rep. Like I said, council member, they know how to get a hold of me. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for your service, officer.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it.
Aloha. Okay, so Scott, you want to go back to the slides?
Sure, and I just wanted to add, my office works really closely with Officer Makanani too. And also, like, if you're not able to contact any of the other government representatives, we can help get in touch with him, and we have a direct line to him as well. But anyways, I just want to highlight the Ohana zones as one way we're able to bring on, you know, housing and shelter. Another example, oh, you can move ahead. Another example is this law, Act 26, that was passed in 2020. And this provides additional tools to kind of support the efforts of law enforcement, like Officer Makanani at HPD. So let's say they come in and they cite or arrest somebody for trespass, which is in some cases can be a petty misdemeanor. And if that person is, you know, has mental health challenges or deemed not fit to proceed with their trial, this law actually provides a mechanism for people who are charged with nonviolent petty misdemeanors to actually be diverted to the Hawaii State Hospital so we can hold them for assessment for a period of 7 days. It's really critical because it helps us to have time to assess the person, make sure they getting linked to appropriate treatment or substance abuse services. And then we can transition them at the end of that 7 days back to a community setting, ideally with wraparound supports for them. This is part of broader efforts by the state legislature and also the Department of Health to really try to build out some of our mental health services. Earlier this week, there was a blessing for the new state hospital facility out in Kaneohe. And that's a big deal because that will really enhance our capacity to take in additional people with mental health issues and hopefully increase our capacity to serve more than just what we call forensic cases. Right now, we can only hold people who are engaged in forensic or criminal proceedings at the state hospital, but with the new facility, we may be able to expand that even further, have more capacity to serve those who are mentally ill. But pushing for those types of policy changes like Act 26, increased funding like the Ohana Zone measure, that's part of my role, and then helping work with the executive branch agencies and state government to implement it. Next slide. And another piece, again, is coordinating with the city and county. So I cannot emphasize enough how much partnership is really key in all of this. So my office has a counterpart in the Mayor's Office of Housing at the city and county. Right now, that position is in transition, but I meet regularly with whoever's in that job. And I talk to the previous people multiple times a week, nearly every day. We have a lot of cross referrals across our offices, and we meet to try and figure out ways how we can continue to partner. We also have multiple state contracts with the city and with HPD, such as for the HONU program, and that's featured in the picture to your right. Next slide. And then I know Officer Makanani had to go, but if people, you know, have questions like, hey, you know, if I have a complaint on what I know is a city property, right? That area that's by the comfort station or any of the parks, the city parks in this area, or even any other city property, you can contact the city with concerns in one of 3 ways. You can call that number on the screen, or you can email complaints@honolulu.gov, or perhaps the easiest way is you can report concerns to the city through their 311 phone app or website. And the concerns, when you report them into the city, just be really clear about what you're calling about. If it's an encampment, say there's an encampment, I'm concerned about sanitation or possibly other types of issues, and provide the location. The city will refer it to the appropriate departments. In this case, it's most likely going to be Department of Parks and Rec, and then they'll schedule it for enforcement. The city's enforcement schedule for what they call the stored property ordinance, or sometimes people call them sweeps. It's updated Monday through Friday. If you go to the Office of Housing website of the city, so honolulu.gov/housing, you scroll down, there's a SPO, SNO enforcement tab under their hot link section that you can click on. Next slide. And so just to help you folks know what to look for, it's the hot links tab, and then an example of what the enforcement schedule looks like. So this is, again, updated every Monday through Friday, and except for holidays. So when I went earlier today, it shows the schedule for upcoming Monday, the 22nd, where they're going to address. Next slide. So you might be asking, well, what do I do if I don't know if it's city jurisdiction or private? Again, you can call my office. So our number is listed there, 586-0193, or email gov.homelessness@hawaii.gov. You can also call any of your legislators. Again, we work with all of them very closely, and they'll either call myself or our counterparts at the city, and we'll make sure the concern gets routed so the appropriate department takes action. If it's private property, we work with HPD, and we'll have them go in and, you know, accompany the private landowner, like how Officer Makanani accompanied Ryan from the driving range, or Howard and Ellie from Newtown, to go look at their properties, and they can help address some of the concerns. And then finally, last slide, if you have any questions, just let me know. But I wanted just to provide a brief recap and try to address as many different things as I can.
Is this a good time to ask questions, or did we want to have Ryan Shibuya provide the information for the driving range first, and then after that we'll have questions? Is that okay, Scott?
Yeah, I think we do. Oh, sorry, it's Howard. I think that's a good idea. And then afterwards, after Ryan, I wanted to at least share. I know Councilman Elefante and Ms. Coloretti couldn't be here, but I wanted to share some of the things going on in their property, and then maybe open it up for questions, Senator. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. Ryan, are you on? Ryan? I did circle back with them to make sure that they're going to be here. Ryan or Coach Casey?
Oh, I don't think they come tonight. I think they are having some engagement last minute.
Oh, okay.
So I can speak to that,
yes,
maybe briefly what they did. So so again, what Scott has said is that Ryan, with Officer Makanani's help for security, as well as to cite the homeless folks for trespassing, were asked to hold off a little until Willie, one of the homeless folks, was making progress to get the housing. I believe that happened, which is great if it did. And then that's when Ryan went in, and they found a roadway to get from the driving range up north to the 3 encampments. And he provided a picture of it being cleared. I think Ellie just recently visited, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellie, took some pictures, which we'll get to you, Senator. So there were like 3 encampments in the driving range on the north side, which Scott had showed at the Google map. And 2 of them were pretty massive. And so I believe because from the picture they did it, he got he paid a contractor to go in and clear it. So fortunately it's cleared, and I assume he'll continue to monitor that it is being cleared. So that's I think that's what he would have shared if and then thanking them for of what they did, and again they had to pay their own to get it cleaned up. So anyway, and then sorry, just to transition against on the city and county property, again we want to thank Councilman Elefante and his staff for their efforts. So we gave them Councilman Elefante a list of items NECA wanted to see done on the city and county property, and one of them is we asked for a fence that earlier when Mr. Iwata made a comment about putting a fence. Yeah, it was on the plot that Ryan Scott showed, that what Mr. Walker was talking about putting a fence in is city and county property. So that's one of the requests we had put on the to-do list to Councilman Elefante. Another one was to repair the fence around the parking lot. There's fencing missing, there's top rails missing, and especially to prevent the homeless from parking there anymore when they were parking at one corner so they could get to the Alphabet Land encampment. Maybe in retribution, this is just me saying that they went and cut the bars on the cattle gate. So they're hacksaw too, but they left one bar on each gate, so the gate is still standing. So we want that repaired. So, and then the last item in particular was the locking of the restrooms, and that might help deter the the encampments. But so Councilman Elefante, his staff, Ms. Coloretti, submitted all that to the proper, I guess, city and county channels. And I think it takes time to get things done. So one of the things they did was we asked to replace that no trespassing sign that goes behind the conference station into the driving range that was on the post. We just wanted a sign replaced. For some reason, they replaced it, but they put it on the parking lot fence for some reason. And then somebody stole it. So they're in the process of putting another fence. But, that was one of the, I'm just saying, action is being done as it moves through the food chain, yeah. And so just one last thing on the city and county. They did do a sweep several weeks ago. But the odd thing was, and Representative Kong mentioned this, is that after the sweep, you still see Calvin's blue Corolla parked in front of the restroom. So it's like head scratching, like, okay, if they cleared Calvin's encampment, which was on the city and county property, why is Calvin still there? And I think Ellie took a picture maybe today or yesterday of Calvin's encampment. So, but again, it's promising what Scott said. If Calvin is now, he's flip-flopping and now he's looking at getting help, that would be great. So again, we still see Calvin. So, okay, thank you for letting me share that for the city and county. And yeah.
Thank you, Howard. And I do want to share that I was one of those who did the site visit back in June.
Yeah, thank you.
And it was very alarming. Some of them were very close to the Alphabet Land, and that was, I know, was a concern to many people, many folks. And so when I just got the text from Ellie and showing the cleaner area, I'm very impressed. I kudos to the driving range folks for being able to facilitate that, because I know they pulled a lot of resources to make that happen.
So one last thing I want to add, Senator, is that the Newtown community there, like I mentioned in another meeting, we have a neighborhood watch. So as a whole, the community is very diligent because they're passionate about the community. So things I mentioned about seeing Calvin's car parked there, I'm sure other community members have seen them and have wondering. So again, it was good Scott shared about the contacts. If you see something, who to contact, and yeah, so several avenues how to report things. Yeah. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ellie, I don't know if you can share those pictures, but I'm trying to share them via email. But here's what we're gonna do, because in fact, somebody from on the chat asked whether they can download the slides. So our plan really is, especially for the benefit of those who are not able to attend this meeting. I know there's 68 people here, but there's like what, 2,000 NECA members. So what we'd like to do is actually do minutes of this meeting, attach the slides and attach the pictures from Ellie. So then everybody has access to that information and not just the people on this Zoom call. So hopefully that's satisfactory.
So I might add, Senator, the last time we did a Zoom like this with the community you mentioned, I think you downloaded it to YouTube, and then we email blasted to the community. I think it was well received. So I'm not sure if you're planning to do that with this particular call. And if you do, then that would be a big help.
So minutes, YouTube link, as well as the slides of Scott, as well as the pictures from Ellie. Scott, if I can just launch you into two questions. One is if you can characterize for us, because I think people may have some mistaken notion as to who the homeless people are. Because I know you, I think one of the questions that I asked at the very beginning was, are there families? Are there, people who are having economic challenges, and that's the reason why they're homeless? Second, if you can address, I think you kind of already address some of the questions, like what do they do if they have a homeless concern, but more particularly, what do they do if they see a homeless person in the street that may be doing something that, I mean, do they call 911? Do they approach that person? Because I think they're not aware of the protocols. Particularly, is there any risk to their own safety if they do that? So if you can address those two questions, and then after that, we'll open it up to everybody's questions. And
Okay.
again, I'm trying to be mindful because we want to finish at 8 o'clock, because that's what we said. We said an hour's worth. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, so to start off with, so the homeless individuals in this particular area are primarily single adults or adult couples. As far as we know, there's no minor children or families in this area. For the most part, they're mainly all local people who've been in Hawaii for a long time. I think, there's many different reasons why I think people have fallen into homelessness. I think there's a misconception that a lot of the homeless individuals are engaged in hardcore criminal activity, and that's not necessarily the case. I think in discussion with Officer Makanani, really, for the most part, the individuals in this area are generally, their violations, if they do have a criminal record, are primarily for, trespass or camping in unauthorized areas. So I think it's just something to be aware of. In terms of, if people see a homeless individual and you're not sure what to do, I think it really depends what the circumstances is. What I would advise people is, I think we always, we just should always be careful and cautious, right? If you think that there's a potential danger, self or others, let's say you see someone screaming and you're not sure what to do, you can always call 911 as an option. They can divert to the appropriate agencies, whether it's HPD to do a crisis response to someone, or the city has a new program called CORE, Crisis Outreach Response and Engagement, which 911 can also dispatch out to respond to the person if it's not an emergency and that person is really in need of social services. If it's not a situation where you feel you may potentially be in danger in crisis, like I said earlier, you can call my office and we can dispatch an outreach worker. Just know it's not going to be in real time, because we do have many teams providing outreach around the island, but they unfortunately don't have the capacity to go as soon as a call is sent to them. In contrast, the new CORE program I mentioned, they may be able to respond a little bit faster, but it's not always in real time either. If you do want that CORE number, because I know I didn't share it earlier, it's 768-2673, or really easy to remember, 768 CORE. They have red shirts, they kind of drive around in a modified ambulance, and they provide assistance to individuals primarily for medical needs, but can link back to other types of services if they need to. I hope that answers the question. I know there are some other questions about fire near the driving range, so I don't know if you want me to try and respond to those as well.
Please go ahead. So there's two questions, yeah?
Yeah. So for the fires, what I would do, I mean, obviously, I think if you see a fire immediately, call 911 for fire. But if you know that it's occurring on a regular basis and it's occurring because of trespass, I would send it in to the 311 or call my office and let me know, and we can flag it to the city to prioritize it for them so they're aware. Like I mentioned earlier, and like Howard shared, Ryan has gone out pretty recently to the area. And as far as we know, all those encampments are cleared. I know you mentioned in the chat that it's near the HECO tower. So as part of this process, I've actually gotten to know the HECO security team, and they do regularly patrol those towers. And HECO actually is moving into a warehouse location that's pretty nearby. So if you see something that's near one of the towers, I can also alert HECO in addition to alerting the appropriate city agencies so that they can follow up. Someone had asked about penalty if the person starts a fire. You know, I think the challenge is proving the person was responsible for arson. That's always very difficult for police because you can see someone near a fire, you don't know necessarily if they're responsible for it. And I think that's the challenge. And as far as, you know, criminal penalty for people who may be trespassing or, you know, cited for being in a park after hours, I know Officer Makanani had to jump off, but one of the challenges we're seeing right now is even if HPD cites arrests for these things, they often get dismissed by the courts because they're relatively minor offenses. And so I think, although there is a law enforcement response, we know that's not the solution to homelessness. We really need to look at making those connections to get people, you know, out of the situation into something more stable. And on the policy end, really push for trying to increase housing and the other types of supports that we need.
There's a question on how many homeless people are there in these encampments? Less than 10?
Yes, most of these areas look really large. So I think when Howard and Senator yourself and others actually went on the site visit with Rich Jamasaki and some others to look at the sites, although it looks very large, oftentimes it's only 1 or 2 people residing in the area. So it's it's not a large amount of people. And for the most part, these are people who have been homeless in the Aiea Pro City area for several years. So Kelvin, I think, who's been mentioned a number of times, he was previously at Blaisdell Park for several years. So these are not people who are newly homeless necessarily also.
So Senator, if I may add to what Scott said is about the case by case when you call HPD. Yesterday when I was driving to get dinner, there was looked to be a homeless young lady. She was laying in the gutter next to the curb at the bottom of Kahele, where you make a right turn to Mauna Loa in front of Dave's Ice Cream, and it was kind of dangerous. So I called HPD and they said they would send an officer. By the time I came back, she was gone. So, you know, maybe so. At that time, I thought it was a case calling HPD, and you know they right away they said they would send somebody. I agree. And then I don't want to detract from the comments you're getting, Caution, but I just wanted to add, if I may interject at this point, is that, you know, some of the pending issues we have, and I know maybe not related, but you know, one, there's that long hair individual who dresses in the black trench coat. And it appears if you drive every morning, you pass by Kahele baseball field, in the dugout that's on the Eva side, he's there. And just like he sleeps there. And he's been approached by the outreach and he just refuses. So right now it's pending what to do. One idea Councilman Elefante's office was thinking was to cite him for curfew, like, you know, the park's supposed to be closed certain hours, so he's not supposed to be there. So he's still there. If you drive, like I said, every morning you'll see him. And then I know folks have said the Waimalu Canal homeless, not really related to NECA, but there was a concern from a community member. So I thought I'd just reiterate that there's 2, well, I don't know if there's 2 actually. One is the one on the canal south side of Mauna Loa Road, Dwayne, everybody knows Dwayne. And it's complicated, as Scott said, because he'll put his stuff in that small strip of property that he's related to the owner so that they cannot take it away. But if you look now, that small strip is so packed. He still has stuff on the canal that I don't know if it still applies. And then he's refused help and he's been arrested and released and stuff. So, but he's still there. And the concern was if all his stuff flows into the canal and washes out with a big rain, it might clog, you know.
Right, yeah.
Open. And then across the street, oh, sorry, just if I may, Scott, across the street, there was mention about 10 people being underneath the bridge. And then someone mentioned they've been found housing and stuff. So I was wondering, Scott, if you can share the status of those 2 issues, although they're not really related.
They're not NECA.
No. Yeah, but I can. I actually was going to mention both of those issues. So I'll start with the bridge that's at the corner of Moanaloa and Kahele. So that's actually a city and county board of water supply bridge, and there are individuals living under. I just did a check myself yesterday. So I think for a while it had been cleared, but there is an encampment set up now. I did send out a message to the city Office of Housing and ask them to contact Board of Water Supply and Department of Facility Maintenance to schedule it for a cleanup. I'm not sure when they'll be able to get out there. So I'll try and see if I can have some of our other city colleagues also follow up on that as well. I know there have been efforts to do outreach for that population. One of the individuals who sometimes resides there is the woman I mentioned earlier who has some behavioral health issues. And so what we've done with that individual is connected her to a program through Department of Health that can provide case management for people who are frequently encountered by police and not able to engage on their own. The whole purpose of that program is not necessarily get the person housed, but to try and get them connected to medication or treatment so that then they're more stable and can pursue something. So, we are working on that. The other issue with Dwayne, as you mentioned, Howard, who said before, it is very complicated. He has some connections to that property and he has family members who actually own that property. But myself, the former representative for the area, Rep. Takayama, Officer Makanani, and many others have actually talked to the relative. And I think she's supportive of trying to transition him off the property. And they did, demolish the home, as most people know. But what happens now when the city cleans the canal, which they have jurisdiction over, he just puts his stuff in the gap in the fence on the private property. We had a meeting just recently to try and brainstorm some different solutions. And I think we need to continue to put our heads together on that. He is originally, or he has connections to another island and has had at least different points in time expressed interest in possibly going to Kauai and relocating. We've offered that assistance. There is a relocation program that's available through IHS, which we have offered as an option. But I think he also has, I believe, a daughter here that he had wanted to stay close to. So there's different things that are kind of keeping him here. Okay. I think what we need to do is just make it difficult for him to put things in the gap in the private property. And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to change what's going on with that.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Howard, we're going to really confine our discussion to the NECA environment only because we have 5 minutes, and if we spend the time on the Waimalu stream homeless issue, we're not going to be able to get to the other questions that are on the chat. And I apologize, Howard.
No.
And you know what? Certainly people would be free if they want to reach out to you to find out more about the Waimalu stream homeless issue if they're so interested and so inclined. But I do want to acknowledge a question about the fact that we've been focusing a lot of our attention on the lower Newtown, but what about the higher level of Newtown? There's talk about that perhaps there's some encampments there. Have we found that to be true, Scott?
I think we would need to have a better understanding of exactly where. I just know anecdotally through people I know who live in Newtown, I've heard that there may be homeless individuals near the Greenbelt, but I'm not sure. That's just anecdotal. What will help our office and probably the Newtown Community Association is if people observe that type of activity, if you can contact, LE or the appropriate people at the rec center, but also contact my office and the legislators so we're aware. A lot of the response to homelessness is complaint driven. So if people don't call in to express a concern, we're not able to appropriately follow up on it. So I think that would assist. And then being really clear about what part of the Greenbelt you think that you're seeing people in is also really important, because jurisdiction, as you've seen with the area by the rec center driving range, can sometimes be complicated. And so we really need to get a clear sense of where it is, and that's going to impact like how we best address it. There also may be some homes where I think there's a group home up on Royal Summit area in that area. And if again, I've heard anecdotally there's some concerns that there may be group home activity. If there is that type of thing, you know, again, bring it to people's attention and we can follow up with appropriate departments. There's different regulation for what's allowed and not allowed. And but again, if it's not brought to people's attention, we're not able to follow up on it.
So Senator, real quickly, just a minute.
Mm,
Ellie has been the lightning rod for reports of the, I hope the rest of the community knows. So
yes.
when there's possible encampment, they'll call Ellie and then we can turn around and contact the appropriate Scott or whoever. But the one he was referring to in the Greenbelt, Ellie went out to investigate and couldn't
Mm.
find anything. But
Mm.
the Greenbelt belongs to Newtown. So it's a
Mm.
Newtown responsibility to resolve. Thank you.
Okay, so in the remaining 3 minutes, Howard and Scott, do you mind sharing what the next steps are? Is there anything that is pending that we need to follow up on, that we need to provide a report to our constituents, to the residents?
Scott,
Well,
you want to go first or?
Yeah, I can be really brief. I mean, I think just having regular activity like Officer Makanani was saying and continue to check on some of these areas. And then I do think, you know, the suggestion to build a fence to delineate the city property from the other properties will be really key. And as someone's mentioned before the meeting, it's really important for prosecution for trespass that there's a barrier. Because it's not only the police that need to document that there's a fence. If the prosecutors decide to charge, it's a really critical factor for them to move forward with criminal prosecution. So I think if it's possible to continue that advocacy for the fence to be on the dividing boundary, I think that would be helpful.
So real quick, Senator.
Yes, Howard.
In my mind, simply on the Newtown properties, we have a handle on it, and you know we continue to monitor and sweep if need be. The state, basically, the only responsibility I see is underneath the freeway. And recently, a tent popped up underneath that was brought up by a community member. It was kind of hidden, and I'm not sure. I know Jun Yang and his crew does a weekly great job of cleaning the state property. So I don't know if they cleaned it or the individual decide to move on. The part two things to me still need to kind of keep an eye on, follow up, is that to-do list that NECA gave to you know, Councilman Elefante, who then turned around and put in the appropriate process. You know, like I said, trying to get the restroom to close at night, fixing up the parking lot, providing a sign that doesn't get stolen, etc. So we need to follow up on that because you know, he had mentioned it takes time to go through the city and county mill. And then the last one, maybe you don't want to hear this again, Senator, but the Waimalo stream. So those are the things moving forward are still work to do. But again, thank you for everything you do for the community, Senator, and bringing everybody together, because I think a lot of positive things occurred because of everybody working together. And then speaking about the fire concern, you know, it was brought up at the previous Zoom, but with the driving range clearing the homeless, that's a little relief that there's nobody there to start the fire. Not to say they could come back and for retribution start one. We've had a fire like us before coming up from there. Fortunately, it didn't harm anything, but that's always a concern. But like I said, I depend on the NECA community to be vigilant and call the appropriate authorities. And if they see encampment, you know, contact Ellie. So again, thank you, Senator, everybody, Scott, and everybody else.
Everyone. Yeah, I want to again be mindful of everybody's time. I want to thank everyone. There were like 65, you know, or so people who were on the Zoom call, which is an incredible number of folks who are interested in this issue. Obviously, this is a complex issue. We cannot solve this overnight. We're trying to navigate it and have a good balance between trying to be humane and at the same time trying to protect our neighborhoods. I want to acknowledge Rep. Kong, because Rep. Kong has been working on this homeless issue for decades. So and so I know he's got a lot of knowledge and his akamai about this. So, and like I said, you know, Senator, for some, I guess in Council Member Elefante will continue to be part of this. And I just want to thank everyone who attended this meeting. We are going to be sending links to everyone so that then everybody will be apprised of what happened. And you know what? I think as far as the encampments are concerned, I think it's been cleaned up. Thanks to everybody. There's a team effort. I think we're good to go. However, again, I think staying vigilant. If you see any encampments within the territory, within that area, we gotta, you know, move fast, move quickly, because we want to make sure that, like I said, it does not degenerate into what it was before. So I have talked to Howard about using Zoom as a forum for other I guess other issues that you might have at NECA, because there's actually other things that we are working on, yeah, Howard,
Yeah.
as far
yeah,
as
yeah.
like the illegal business that's operating on Kahele and that sort of thing. But again, because we have very little time, I apologize that, you know, we didn't have time to do the Kahele you know, illegal business house. But we want to make sure that we focus our discussion really on the NECA property, the demarcation lines and what had been done then. But if
Yep.
you ever see Coach Casey or Ryan Shibuya at the Newtown driving range, they have been so helpful, and I think they've really you know, expended a lot of resources to clean it up. So kudos to them and mahalo. Again, thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
you.
Tomorrow is a
Thank
state
you.
holiday. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ellie, for all your efforts. Aloha and good night.
Thank you, Senator. Good night.